What is going on out there in Portland? Small public protest at an ICE facility. They say small because they don't want you to take their illegal aliens out. He's an asylum seeker, aka an illegal alien. The Trump administration later revised that list. They shortened it back down to 35. A little overbroad, but you know, they're unhappy. 500 to 35. Well, that's good. You want to focus on the big ones. Portland under attack, and the Secretary of War now called to action. President Trump saying this and being shared by the Secretary of War called Pete Hegseth. You know who he is. He said the following courtesy of the president. At the request of Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, I am directing Secretary of War Pete Hegseth to provide all necessary troops to protect war-ravaged Portland and any of our ICE facilities under siege from attack by Antifa and other domestic terrorists. I am also authorizing full force if necessary. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And of course, we have seen some clips of what's going on out there in Portland. Here's Fox News that came out this morning with this clip sharing an arrest that took place in Portland, Oregon on Sunday night. Hey, watch it. Hey, watch your mouth. This is a live stream.
Now it looks like the police officers are pulling back.
Uh-oh.
So we'll let this play out here.
Uh-oh, police. They're coming. Get out of there. There's a frog.
Yes.
Potty mouth Antifa commies.
Yeah, the protesters out here have filled the streets again.
Look at these freak shows. What are they doing out there? So we think these are just communists in disguise. Obviously, this guy looks like is he trying to be Pepe the Frog or something? All right. So anyways, here's another dude. Feels kind of like an insurrection. And I don't know exactly where they were going. Maybe the police wanted to go that direction. And if they wanted to go that direction, this crowd is obstructing their movement of arrestees. And maybe they should all be indicted immediately. So, and rounded up just like they did to the J6ers. Facial scan all of them and go and arrest them for obstruction of the law. So we've got that. Now that's just one clip. Here was another one. Katie Davis Court. She is on the streets in the middle of it all. And she shared this one. They say Antifa effed with my security guard again and quickly found out. Here, let's check this one out. They're spraying stuff? Oh, that's the law enforcement. Okay. Pepper spraying. Don't attack them. What is going on out there in Portland? All right, so we're looking forward to some law and order being disseminated. Here's more from Fox and Friends. They said 2 guns were taken from the rioters who were against the fence at the ICE facility and the investigation into some sort of an explosive device as well. Fox shared this one this morning.
ICE processing center in Broadview, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. 11 violent rioters were arrested outside of the detention center. 2 guns were taken from the rioters who were against the fence at the ICE facility. And the investigation into some sort of an explosive device found near the ICE Chicago detention facility. And this is the same place last week. 16 were arrested at the facility.
So there's 2 elements to the story. Obviously, the legal aspect. If y'all remember, during the height of the crisis, I went in on the ground and they were taking over the schools, taking over the health centers that they had shut down in the city. And the rival gangs were warring with each other with the legal gangs
too. Remember
that were in the town. You also have a major crime problem. Guns within Chicago, illegally in Chicago as well. So I just don't understand why the mayor, I know the residents want more help. You need a presence of law enforcement there, not just for the illegals that are criminal migrants within the country, but the actual criminals that are out there on the day-to-day basis.
All right, so some good footage there from Fox News and some conversation about what is happening. But it's Chicago, it's Portland, it's everywhere. There's lawlessness on the streets. These are individuals out fighting whatever they're calling fascism by, I guess, shooting and killing people at ICE facilities and in the neck at college campus events. But here is more. The Portland and Oregon individuals, lawyers for the state, are now suing. And they're saying, what do you think you are? You want to stop this violence happening on our streets? You want to allow federal government officials to do their jobs and deport illegal aliens, many of whom are criminal illegal aliens? They sued and they submitted a 41-pager, and this is coming out of the District of Oregon in Portland. The traditional and strong resistance of Americans to any military intrusion into civilian affairs course, has deep roots in our history. Yeah, okay. 1972 case from the Supreme Court. Now, our nation's founders recognized that military rule, all right, so you can see this is going to be dramatic here, particularly by a remote authority indifferent to local needs, was incompatible with liberty and democracy. Yeah, so are 20 million illegal aliens invading our country. Foundational principles of American law, therefore, limit the president's authority to involve the military in domestic affairs. Those principles come from the Constitution. We don't need a lecture from these people about it. Defendants have trampled on these principles. They federalize members of the National Guard, that's what they're mad about, to participate in civilian law enforcement. On September 28th, Secretary of War, they're not even honoring his pronouns. He calls himself the Secretary of War, okay? These people are so xenophobic and bigoted. He identifies as the Secretary of War. What's so complicated about this for them, okay? Issued a memo calling into federal service 200 members of the Oregon National Guard to stop the lawlessness that we just saw. This order effectuated was by a social media post by President Trump that we just read. Citing nothing more than a baseless, wildly hyperbolic pretext, the president says that Portland is a war-ravaged city under siege from domestic terrorists called Antifa. Defendants have thus infringed on Oregon's sovereign power to manage its own city. This is not promoting public safety. Trump has been provocative, and this is arbitrary, and it's undermining public safety. So the facts cannot justify this overreach, they write. While Trump's actions appear focused on the ongoing protest at an ICE facility, which is a federal facility that they can protect, those protests have been small. Okay, so they're not big enough? Well, that's your judgment. Typically involving less than 30 people, and the protesters' activities have not necessitated any arrests since mid-June. We just saw one a minute ago. But defendants' heavy-handed deployment of troops threatens to escalate tensions and stokes new unrest, meaning that more of our resources, the state's resources, will have to be spent responding to Trump. So they say Trump's deployment of troops is patently unlawful because their stated basis for the federalization is patently pretextual and baseless. They cannot satisfy the three requirements necessary to invoke the Guard. They also violate the 10th Amendment, and so they should be enjoined. We saw a very similar battle with Gavin Newsom, and then of course with Gavin, by the time we got some litigation on that, Trump had basically said we solved the problem and now we're leaving. So here they say are the people suing. State of Oregon, their attorney general, City of Portland, municipal corporation, they're all suing. And they're suing Trump and Hegseth. Look at this. Again, mispronouncing him. It's not defense, it's war, you bigots. The U.S. Department of Defense is a department of the executive branch, we know. Kristi Noem runs Homeland. And here's the background. They say the U.S. Constitution authorizes Congress to provide for calling forth a militia to execute the laws. Today, the National Guard is a state-based military reserve force. It consists of two overlapping but distinct organizations. They may serve in a number of capacities, and they list those out for us. Now, Congress has granted the president, right? So Congress delegates this stuff to the president as they do. And they say under 10 U.S. Code 12406 that whenever the United States or any of the Commonwealths is invaded or in danger of invasion, you can go, or there is a rebellion or danger of rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States. Sounds pretty good. And also, the president is unable with regular forces to execute the laws of the United States, then the president may bring in the National Guard to repel the invasion, suppress the rebellion, or execute those orders. Thus, the president's authority writing Antifa type of statements on their bullets while they're doing so. Thus, the president's authority is very limited, right? So legally, they're just going to say, this doesn't meet the statute. This doesn't meet a standard rebellion. This isn't an invasion. They're not setting up their autonomous zones. And Trump is violating posse comitatus, saying that under the law, it prohibits anyone from deploying the military for civilian law enforcement. He's not doing that. Notably, this does not confer an exception, the law, to posse comitatus. And Trump's response, of course, is we're not doing civilian law enforcement. We're protecting federal facilities. The legal and normative constraints, they write, have now been abused. And we can't move the National Guard, they're quoting Trump, but they say he has repeatedly expressed his intentions to use the military for routine domestic law enforcement. They go back through all of Trump's quotes. Look, Trump said, we'll deploy the military. We'll deploy the military. And they have used the military for civilian law enforcement in LA and DC. Now, DC is a separate entity because it's a federal district, but this is not. Trump federalized the California National Guard and began aggressive immigration enforcement. California sued, we remember. On August 11th, the Trump turned back to Washington, DC. At a press conference, Trump announced that he had planned a deployment to DC, the National Guard. Remember? Liberation Day in DC. Same day, Hegseth also announced national troops would happen in DC. On June 2nd, for the first time, federal authorities arrested an asylum seeker at an immigration court in Portland. And this arrest catalyzed small public protest at an ICE facility. They say small because they don't want you to take their illegal aliens out. He's an asylum seeker, aka an illegal alien. What's he going to immigration court for? We don't know exactly, but maybe they discovered something that's problematic and they don't want them in the country anymore. So on June 6th, protests began in LA. Again, they love their illegals. In the following days, small protests continued outside of Portland. At one point, protesters blocked an ICE driveway, illegal, with a makeshift barricade obstruction. And that feels like a conspiracy to me of seditionist traitors. Police bureau officers cleared the barricade within minutes, where somebody could have been killed, citing safety concerns. Then the protest continued, officers taking appropriate action. They arrested a few people who engaged in criminal activity. Great. So then on June 15th, the Portland mayor, reacting to troop deployments in LA, said, "We don't want the National Guard coming here," said Mayor Keith. Subsequent events proved the mayor correct. The small protest at the ICE facility became less energetic and required less ICE and law enforcement. The last arrest by the police was June 19th. That's kind of the problem, guys, is you're not conducting the law enforcement that the federal officers need you to do. So that's why they're coming in, to protect the federal facilities. In the days since, Portland police has monitored the near nightly protests, none of which police intervention was required. Then in July, Tom Homan, shout out, the Border Bazaar, he said, "We're going to release more immigration enforcement officers," tripling down in Portland. Then on July 19th, protests continued with up to 60 people at an ICE facility. That's a lot. And this has been sustained, right? Night after night, month after month. They said it's low energy and they were just seated quietly. All right. Sporadic protests continued over the subsequent weeks. On September 1st, over 100 protesters marched to the buildings. In response, they deployed chemical gas and pepper balls at the crowd. Sounds like they were very nervous that they were about to be insurrected. Maybe they should go raid all of their homes at 2 a.m. Portland Police Bureau is a sophisticated law enforcement agency, and every officer is just amazing. Says that their precinct covers downtown Portland. They have 80 full-time officers who are there. We monitor social media. We know how to govern our streets, and therefore we don't need the National Guard. Now, aside from the incidents described above, they write, Trump decided to focus on us. On September 5th, during a Fox News report on Portland, they included misleading clips from Portland back in 2020. Shortly thereafter, Trump appeared to reference the same misleading Fox. So Trump's watching Fox. He's like, "Oh, that's happening right now?" They're like, "No, that was back from the George Floyd era when they were torching the city back then because they wanted Trump to lose back then." President Trump later designated Antifa a terrorist organization. Afterwards, he described a plan to insert federal personnel into various cities. He said, "Have you seen Portland at all? You take a look what's happening in Portland." Trump said, this has been going on for years. It's true. Since the summer of love, remember? It's just people out of control. It's crazy. We're going to stop that very soon. While answering questions from the press on September 25th, just days ago, Trump baselessly insisted that people had just burned the place down. He said, "Portland is on my list of things to do as we clean up the cities, and we're going to Portland." Then on September 27th, Trump followed through on his threats to what? Stop the madness? Posting a message on True Social that we read. "I'm directing the Secretary of War to provide all necessary troops to Portland." What a nice truth that was. Later that day, Major General Reiger requested that the Oregon governor authorize the National Guard in a non-federalized status based on a request from Homeland. The memo threatened to direct mobilization under U.S. code if this governor did not agree within 12 hours to activate the National Guard. So I can go through you. Remember, Gavin sued over this, said you have to go through me or by me, or like, in other words, Gavin needs to approve it, was his argument. Trump said, "No, I'm going to do it. It can come through your office, or I'm going to just nationalize them," obviously, because that's the whole purpose of what's happening. The local law, the local governors, the local county, whatever officials can't handle it, so the feds have to step in. Now, DHS spokeswoman called Ohio Tricia, she said President Trump and Secretary Noem are taking action to restore law and order following weeks of violent riots at ICE facilities, assaults on law enforcement, and the terrorist attack at our ICE facility in Dallas. Now, we don't know, they write, how that was related to Portland, but in a press conference the same day, the governor of Oregon stated, "Oregon, we don't want your troops here. We're going to handle it ourselves. Our public safety will be dealt with by local law enforcement." Nonetheless, on September 28th, yesterday, Secretary of Defense, "It's war, you jerks," issued a memorandum calling 200 members of the National Guard into federal service for a period of 60 days. So how you like that, Governor? That order was styled as further implementation of another memo, which also vaguely cited, they say, numerous incidents of violence and disorder, and violence and disorder against federal property and federal law is a form of rebellion. Can't do that. Now, the federal government, they say, also holds key powers and responsibilities over immigration. Components within Homeland enforce those laws, and they're now doing that. Among them, Customs and Border Patrol is responsible for determining the admissibility of non-citizens. And they give us some background on ICE, saying states and municipalities don't have responsibility for immigration stuff. And under the 10th Amendment, powers not delegated to the feds is reserved to the states, aka the people. Now, in consideration of of this responsibility, Oregon passed a sanctuary promise in 1987. Yeah, this is part of the problem. The first law of its kind, which prohibits state and local government agencies from using their resources to assist with federal immigration enforcement. They say, it's not our problem, it's your problem. Oregon's sanctuary promise has been updated many times, and it needs to be reversed. And if they're not going to do it, then we'll just enforce the law from the federal level. What a beautiful system and duality. The president has repeatedly attacked sanctuary cities. In 2020, he said they're all run by liberal Democrats like Joe Biden. That's true. While running for his current term, Trump continued to demonize cities where Democrats had been elected as leaders who are hollowing out their own cities in a suicidal tendency. On August 20th, he said, the crime is so out of control in our country. I mean, you have cities, Trump said. I will say this, the top 25, almost all are run by Democrats, and they have very similar policies. But you can't walk across the street to get a loaf of bread. You get shot, you get mugged, you get arred, you get whatever it may be. And you've seen it. I've seen it. It's time for a change, says Trump. We have to bring back our cities. So then on Inauguration Day, Trump came in, boom, issued Executive Order 14159, protecting the American people against invasion, because we just got invaded for 4 years and much before that, which once again sought to defund the sanctuary jurisdictions that are literally housing criminal illegal aliens and non-criminal illegal aliens who are in violation of U.S. law, aka criminals, and directed the U.S. Department of Justice to target jurisdictions like ours. They say the Attorney General, Pam, and Christie shall go after the sanctuary jurisdictions. If they're interfering with the lawful exercise of federal law enforcement, then they don't get any federal funds. Cut them off. Further, the Attorney General and Homeland shall evaluate and undertake other actions. So then they were unhappy. Trump signed another executive order saying we're going to end the subsidization of open borders, and another coalition of affected entities all sued. Trump again said, how dare you, sanctuary cities? You're protecting the criminals. They are. Here's more. No more sanctuary cities from the president back in April. He writes, no more sanctuary cities. They protect the criminals, not the victims. They are disgracing our country and are being mocked all over the world. Working on papers to withhold all federal funding for any city or state that allows these death traps to exist. Stephen Miller, on behalf of the Trump administration, what's up, Stephen? Leveled the accusation. He said sanctuary cities shield criminal, they write undocumented immigrants, criminals from removal. He opined that these cities are engaged in systemic criminal violations. It's true. And that they are engaged in a scheme to nullify and obstruct the duly enacted laws of the United States of America. That's exactly right. And they are trying to change the fabric of society, essentially, in America, and have more congressional seats apportioned to them, more federal dollars apportioned to them, so that they can act as a little incubator of illegals to change the entire structure of the country. On April 28th, Trump signed another executive order. In it, he targeted sanctuary jurisdictions as well as the officials who try to use their authority to violate federal law. The order accused its targets of undertaking a lawless insurrection against the supremacy of the federal government. It's true, man. They're openly waving foreign flags on the streets as they're torching cars. What is that? That's an invasion. That's a rebellion. I don't know what else to call that. That's the definition of it. That waving foreign flags as you're torching property in our country, like you're in the middle of a conquest, and you've got the president of Mexico, threatening us, and you got the president of the Senate down there doing the same. The same executive order also expressed the administration's intention to defund these programs. You're a sanctuary and you're working to obstruct the federal government. Why should they cooperate with you? In furtherance of Trump's efforts to coerce sanctuary jurisdictions with defunding threats, he's also asserted sweeping authority to use state law enforcement officers as well. And we're going to condition billions of dollars in money to you. Now, beginning March 2025, Homeland, Christie, and its sub-agencies, including FEMA, they also said, we're not going to give you FEMA money for funding these things. Why would we give you money if it's going to go to your illegal aliens? That money is for American citizens, okay? Forced to choose between foregoing federal funds or facing compulsory diversion. Oh yeah, it's going to cost you so much to just share your data and to stand back and stand by as the federal agents come in and do their jobs. Many of these sanctuary cities were not sanctuary cities. I think you'd see the increased self-deportation of people who shouldn't be here. In the midst of these immigration-related federal defunding actions, Homeland published a list of 500 sanctuary jurisdictions around the country who care more about illegal aliens than they do about their own citizens. It's many citizens too. It's like they are so deluded. They don't even understand that their policies are going to hurt their children if they have any, if they're not aborted. It accused them of shamefully obstructing the Trump administration's deportation plans and shielding dangerous criminal aliens. We have that, right? We have judges in Wisconsin who are showing illegals full privilege to use their back door whenever they want in the middle of court proceedings after after beating victims who were in the courtroom just trying to get a little bit of justice, called Backdoor Judge Dugan. The Trump administration later revised that list. They shortened it back down to 35. A little overbroad, but they're unhappy. 500 to 35. Well, that's good. You want to focus on the big ones. So those were jurisdictions where cities, states, and counties that have laws, ordinances, and regulations and other formalized practices that obstruct or limit local law enforcement cooperation. So they say that list had us on it and they're targeting us. These efforts are now coercing sovereign states. Do you think you're sovereign over the federal government, that you can't comply with immigration law? You can create your own passports and stuff. And now they want us to disavow our own laws. It's called the Supremacy Clause. It's in the Constitution, idiots. The August 5th publication specifically bragged about the success of a threatening letter that coerced Louisville, Kentucky. They wised up. They reversed their sanctuary policies. And there's a strong interest for these sanctuary policies because you get a bunch of people there. Illegals have children under the perverted birthright citizenship provisions that we have it being interpreted erroneously right now. They become citizens, and federal apportionment brings more money and more resources because you got to help the migrants who are just here seeking a better life. So they need billions of dollars and millions to come in to help all these businesses that help flood our country. Now, on August 13th, not long ago, Bondi sent letters to officials in 32 of 35 jurisdictions, including to Oregon, Tina, the governor, and Portland Mayor Keith. The letters contend, they say, all right, listen, from Pam Bondi to Tina, sanctuary jurisdiction policies have undermined the cooperation and obstructed federal immigration enforcement. You're giving aliens cover to perpetrate crimes in our communities and evade the immigration consequences that federal law requires. Bondi's August 13th letter further states that to ensure full cooperation in federal efforts, the president has directed me to identify sanctuary jurisdictions and do something about it. Then in August, Governor Tina responded. She said, "We don't engage in conduct that thwarts you, except not holding people in custody. Requests from federal agencies to law enforcement about immigration enforcement without a judicial order must be documented, must be reported, and it must be denied." Okay, so she's explaining literally the example I just gave. They are saying if you send in a request from ICE, we're not going to hold anybody unless you get a judicial order. We're going to let them go because that's the law. Oregon complies with federal law and we're going to follow our own laws. So if you want them, we're not going to give you the courtesy of hanging on to them. Now, that same day, Trump used the pretext of crime to threaten a plan to expand this, and this is going to hurt us, they say. This unlawful federalization and deployment infringes on our sovereign interest in managing law enforcement within its own borders and facilitating an invasion of the United States of America as a federal entity. And we have the Supremacy Clause, and we're big fans of state power here, but not when we have states incubating to undermine the entire country. That's not what this is for. The power is reserved for the states to what? Violate the Constitution? To enable criminal aliens to come into your country and not be removed? Not even paying common courtesy to the federal government to just hang on to them? So if you want to get aggressive with it, then that's fine. We can be aggressive too. We'll come back in as the federal government, withdraw your funds, and deploy federal agents there to conduct this enforcement. It also infringes on our authority under the Constitution, and I'm sure this is going to an Oregon judge, so I'm sure a judge will be like, yeah, this is fascism. Trump's use of the National Guard is a usurpation of our lives, and Trump's conduct is also going to interfere with current planned activities, which is probably to hire lawyers for illegal aliens. And this is going to increase civil unrest, okay? If you bring in, like the illegals are going to hate it. If you bring in federal agents to go after the illegal aliens, they're going to get so mad, they're going to wreck the whole friggin' place, okay? Recent deployment of troops has provoked protests. By who? Who's doing the protesting? Who's doing the burning and the obstructing? Those military incursions are increasing the unrest and they're going to escalate everything. Well, that's actually good, If you're going to draw out the illegal alien criminals who will burn cars and stand on the rooftops with their Mexican flags, then we want to know who they are. We're happy that they come out of the woodwork. So there's more. It's going to harm Oregon. It's going to suppress business activity. Yeah. Says once the troops come in, foot traffic drops and there's going to be economic harm as well. Our resources are limited. There's also going to be more wildfires. If Trump sends the National Guard in, then the whole city's going to burn down. And so they write the following. Trump doesn't have the power to do this. This is not an actual rebellion or danger of rebellion. This is not war ravage. There's no single instance where the laws couldn't be executed. And so they say, we're in total control of this. Trump's discretion has not met the standard. Count 3, violation of the 10th Amendment, right? It's infringing on Oregon's police power, unlawful coercion, and more. APA, always got to shove that one in there. Everything else fails. Put the APA in there. Administrative Procedures Act, got it. Separation of powers, yep. And the take care clauses. Actually, that's exactly what he's doing, is exercising that clause right now. Many people have just allowed these sanctuary cities to fester because it's been complicated for them. Republicans want the cheap labor. Democrats want the cheap votes. Nobody wants to have a hard conversation about what's happening to the fabric of America. And now the president is enforcing the law. So we're getting these wine fests coming out from people like Scott Kennedy over from the Attorney General's office for the state of Oregon.